Hello Year 7, today we are going to perform a distillation for you. Now distillation is one of your separation techniques that you've learned about in class, but this is just so that you can see it happen. Now we are going to separate, we've got some water that has some food dye in it, and we're going to separate it out so that we just get clean water on the other side. Have you ever had a situation where you really wanted to get clean water out of some water with dye in it? This will be something that can be really helpful for you. Alright, so we've got very elaborate equipment up here, and of course you're not going to have that equipment at home. But if you think carefully about it, I'm sure you can work it out. So we have our water in our round bottom flask, so-called, because it's got a round bottom. And inside there we have some boiling chips. These are just some pieces of broken glass or porcelain that you'll probably break a crucible at some stage while you're a Marist, and your crucible will go into this jar. So what that's going to do is that's going to help stop big bubbles from forming in that solution, and we don't want big bubbles splashing the food dye up, or we'll end up with food dye in our clean water, and that's not going to get us good marks, is it? So what we are going to do is, with our Bunsen burner, we're going to boil this water, and we're just going to keep it, we don't want it boiling madly. We just want it to be boiling gently enough so that all of the steam goes up and goes over into this part of the apparatus. Now this part of the apparatus is called a condenser, or its proper name is a Liebig condenser. And what we're going to do is run some water through that. The Liebig condenser is made of two concentric glass tubes. So, concentric means one is inside the other. So if we chopped through the middle of the condenser and had a look, we would see one glass tube inside the other glass tube. And what we're going to do is make sure that we've got water in between them. And that's going to make the stuff in the middle cool down really well. Okay, so that's going to be our condenser. Then we have a receiver adapter, which is just a piece of glassware that allows us to drip our clean water into a beaker. Okay, so I'm going to turn the water on, just gently. We don't want to waste too much water here. It's very important when we do this that we make the water go in at the bottom and go uphill to come out of the top, because that way the condenser stays full of water even if we're not putting the water through very fast. Okay, I'm going to light the Bunsen burner. So of course, you know how to do this. So we're going to turn, or do we strike the match first? We strike the match first, because we are not chemists yet. We turn on the gas, and we take it in from the side, and that's quite a blue flame for the air holes closed. Just going to open the air holes now. There's that nice roaring blue flame. We always heat with a blue flame, don't we? We don't ever heat with the yellow flame, or we just end up making a mess with carbon everywhere. So I'm just going to keep my hand on the tube of the Bunsen burner right now to make sure that it doesn't slide off of our retort stand base here. And we're going to boil this water. Just rocking the Bunsen burner back and forth, because I don't want a hot spot on the glass. I don't want to crack this glass by having all of the heat just on one part of it. You might need to think about how you might heat your coloured water at home. What do you have at home that can heat water? I can see some little bubbles starting in the solution, and I can see a little bit of steam on the top of the flask now. So we're starting to get that steam coming off, and that steam is going to go up into the condenser. And what you need to be looking for is drips of water, nice pure clean water coming out the other end. Let's see how well we do today. And my boiling chips are starting to bump around a little bit. That's good, they're stopping those big bubbles from forming. Getting more and more steam coming up now. I can see some steam up around the bottom of the thermometer. Do you know what temperature the thermometer is going to be at when the water's boiling? What temperature does water boil at? Did you say 100 degrees? Man, I'm like Bill Nye the Science Guy. Okay, the steam's now going over into the condenser, and that will cool it down. And of course, when you've heated water up to make steam and then you cool the steam down, it's going to make some drops of water in the condenser, and we'll see those start to fall soon. Okay, so you can see some steam coming over to the condenser right here now. And soon that's going to cool down and make a drop of water. And when we get a big enough drop, it's going to slide down inside the condenser and come out of the receiver adapter. Here comes the first drip. Are you watching? Here it comes. Almost. There we go. Some clean water. Some more clean water. So the reason that the water is coming over but the food dye isn't is that the water has a lower boiling point than the food dye. So I'm heating this enough. Don't move, I dismiss you. The bell doesn't. So the water has a lower boiling point, so it's evaporating, but the food dye isn't because we haven't got this temperature hot enough to boil off the food dye yet. This can be done to separate not only food dye and water, but it can be done to separate any liquids that have different boiling points. So you could have some oil and some water, and you could boil it, and the oil wouldn't boil but the water would, and that would be a good way to get the oil separated from the water. Okay, now we could keep going and going and going until all the water is boiled, but that's going to take a long time, so I think we've seen this process happen now, so I'm going to turn the Bunsen burner off. And we're going to have a look at the water that's come over in the condenser once it stops dripping. Just one more drip coming. Next week maybe. Okay, it's just water. So have a look at that nice clean water. There is no trace of the food dye at all left. So all you would need to do, if you ever wanted to take some food dye out of coloured water, would be to invent some way, without this fancy equipment, to boil water and cool steam down. I wonder if you can think of any ways to do that.